Well, alright, I've got the cylinder head in place. There are 3 lengths of bolts, maybe 8 of these, a series of these, and then 2 of these mid-length bolts that go here and here. They do come with sealant already applied. I'm going to apply a little bit more of high temp thread sealant to them. It'll just make me feel a little bit better. And I will also lubricate where they go with oil, so when I torque them down they will be uniform in that manner. There are 2 methods here that can be used. The preferred method would be to torque them down to X foot-pounds and then run a certain degree past that depending on the length of the bolt. I'm not going to be doing that since the tool I bought to do that was defective. I'm going to torque them down with the alternate method, and it is a 3-step process, and I'll go through that once I get there. So once I get these head bolts in, I'll show you how I'm torquing them and in which sequence that's happening. Alright, well, I've got all the bolts installed and just taken down to the surface. As I'd mentioned, I'm going to be doing the alternate method here. I'm going to be running my first pass at 26 foot-pounds, which is what I have set on my torque wrench. Now there's 17 bolts here. I'm starting right here on number 1, so I'm just taking it up to 17, and I'm switching over to number 2, coming down to number 3, going over to number 4, up to number 5, over to number 6, down to 7, over to 8, up to 9, over to 10, down to 11, over here to 12, up to 13, over to 14. It's going to take me a while to do this. Down to 15, over to 16, and finally 17. Now the next pass is going to be done at 44 foot-pounds in the same manner. So starting with number 1, up to number 2, down to 3, over to 4. I'm not going to chop the video on this. Up to 5. Over to 6, down to 7, over to 8, woohoo, up to 9, over and up to 10, down to 11, across to 12, to 13. Over to 14. Down to 15. Woohoo. Across to 16. And up to 17. Now the last pass is going to be done at 66 foot-pounds. There's 60, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In the same order, starting with number 1. There's 1. Coming into 2. Down to 3. Over to 4. Up to 5. Over to 6. Down to 7. Over to 8. Up to 9. Over to 10. Down to 11. Over to 12. Up to 13. Over to 14. Down to 15. Over to 16. And up to 17. And I will let this sit overnight, then I'll come back and run them at this torque one more time. Do the other head the same way. Alright, I retorqued my heads, everything's looking good. I'm installing my studs now for the rocker arms. A little bit of oil. Just run it up with a ratchet. And these are getting torqued down to 45 foot-pounds. I'll do the rest of them just like this. Well, alright, the push rods are going in. Just giving a shot of oil on top of the lifters. Starting to move on now. Alright, well, I'm installing the rocker arms now. I'm starting by just kind of pre-oiling the springs and the valve seals. A little bit on the top of the valve stem, a little right here, a little right here, a little in the hole. Put on these washers here. The conical side goes down. A little more oil. And a couple nuts. Now I'm ready to adjust all the valves. I'll take you through that procedure as well. Well, alright, I'm getting ready to adjust the valves on this. There's a lot of different schools of thought, you know, on how you get where you're going. They all get you to the same spot, so I'm actually going to do this one by the book. I don't even have these tightened up at all, so I'm going to be holding down on these as I watch the engine rotate. I'm basically trying to get cylinder number 1 at top dead center on the firing stroke. So I'm watching and rotating this. I can see the intake opening. Now it's closing. And I'm watching for my timing mark. And it's coming around. And I'm going to stop when that gets to the mark on the timing chain cover. Okay, so those are lined up. And at this point I'm going to adjust all the exhaust valves for cylinders 1, 3, 4, and 8. Starting with number 1. I need to take out all of the lash or the play in here. So I'm probably going to chop this because I don't have these nuts down where they need to go, and I'm just lifting up basically on the push rod right now, just closing that gap. And once I get all that play taken out of there, I'm going to go 1 full revolution. So another way you can spin it and you'll feel a slight resistance. Just about there. There. It just barely tightened up on me. I cannot move it up and down. So I've taken all the lash out. I'm setting at 0 right now. And it's just a matter of starting at the 12 o'clock position and doing 1 full revolution. Right there. I'll do the same thing like I said on the exhaust valves 1, 3, 4, and 8, and then I'll move into the next step. Alright, I completed the exhausts 1, 3, 4, and 8. Now I'm doing the intakes on 1, 2, 5, and 7. I'm sticking little pieces of blue tape on here so I can just make sure that I get them all done. And this one I'm getting close. I don't know if you can hear that. That's the lash. That's what I'm trying to get rid of. So I'm just slowly coming up until I feel a little bit of resistance when I'm turning this. And there it is right there. And hopefully now you can tell that I've taken all of that play out. So this is just 1 turn. Hope I don't hit the camera. And there we go. Alright, I just finished doing the intakes 1, 2, 5, and 7. I need to rotate the crank 360 degrees. I just wanted to show you the mark here on the balancer. I don't even know if it shows up. And then there's one in the timing chain cover. So I'm just going to turn the engine around. And here comes my mark. Right there. So now I'll do the exhausts 2, 5, 6, and 7. Well, alright, just 4 more to go. I need to do the intakes for 3, 4, 6, and 8, and the valve adjustment will be complete. Well, alright, I'm getting back at it again.
I'll go ahead and pour my oil in right now. And I will empty my oil can into here as well. I believe this is 5 gallons. 5.1, yeah. 5 quarts, not 5 gallons. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently. Typically you'd put the manifold on and then prime the oil pump, after that. I'm going to prime the oil pump before I put the manifold on. I just want to make sure everything is going to flow through. And that's that. I just need to dump my oil can in here. Well, alright, I'm getting ready to prime the oil pump and prime the engine itself. I've installed a mechanical gauge temporarily, and this is the tool I'm using right here. Hopefully you can see that. It just goes down in the distributor hole and locks on the shaft. If you don't have one of these with that collar on it that you saw there, it will not prime your valve train. You must have that collar. So I'm going to spin it up here. I've already spun it just a little bit to get some pressure to shorten up the video, but I'm using a 1/2 inch drill here on this low speed. I don't know what the RPM range is, but well, whatever RPM that would be, turning the distributor that fast, I've developed 50 pounds of oil pressure. I'm quite satisfied with that. This is going to take me a while to do this. I'm going to be here 3, 4, 5 minutes just running this drill. I'm just waiting for oil to come out these lifter holes right here, the push rods. And I'll be slowly rotating the engine. As I start to see one oil, I'll start rotating the engine slowly, and that should get the rest of them. Well, alright, I got all the lifters primed. I pretty much just kept rotating the engine and running the drill until I got spills off of each and every one. So the lifter should be pumped up. Everything looks looking good. I'm now going to install the lower intake. There are some nubs or pins that stick off of the gasket, and that's going to be the way they go in the block. There's some holes. They'll sit just like this. But before I put this in, they want a 4mm bead across this area right here. So I will do that very thing with my high-tech measuring gauge. Yep, there's a 4mm bead right there. Do the same thing on this side. And I'll install this portion. Just like that. I'll do the other one the exact same way. That's dead on 4 mils. Kind of showing this one in real time because there's more that needs to be done with the sealer here. Looking good. Now we want a 5mm bead that runs along this end, and it will come up a 1/2 inch on each side of this gasket. Same thing on the back. So I'll start it a 1/2 inch up. Make sure I get my 5 mils. And I assure you this is 5mm, guaranteed. You don't want to put too much on here because it can actually hurt the seal.
And by the way, these surfaces were super clean with some lacquer thinner. And I will come up on this one 1/2 of an inch. And I'll do the same thing on the back, starting in at 1/2 an inch. And that looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to drop the manifold on. I'm going to try to keep my head out of the way. But I need to make sure I sit it straight on first shot. Don't go front to back with it or anything, or you'll mess it up. Final check, make sure that there are no tools or anything left in there, and here we go. That's looking good. And these intake bolts are going to get some blue Loctite. That's what they call for. They don't call for a sealant. Oops. Have to clean that up. So I'll put some blue Loctite on this, and I'll install all of these, and then we'll torque them down. Well, alright, we're getting ready to torque these down. The first pass is going to be at 27 inch-pounds is what they call for. My torque wrench only goes down to 30 on my quarter, so that's what I'm going to be doing for the first pass. So I'm starting in on number 1 here. And coming back to number 2. And then number 3 should be this one right here. Moving up to 4. Back to 5. 6. 7. And 8. And the next pass is going to go to 106 inch-pounds. So that's 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'll run the same pattern again, starting with number 1. Coming over to number 2. Over to 3. Not exciting. I'm just not going to chop the video. Up to 4. Go over here to 5. To 6. 7. And 8. And the last pass is actually calling for 11 foot-pounds, and my 3/8 torque wrench does not go down that far. So to convert an inch-pound to a foot-pound, you just simply divide it by 12. So 11 times 12 is 132. So I will take this up to 132. That's 130. $132, and run the pattern one more time. And it sure doesn't seem like you're putting much on here, but that's all they're calling for. So that's what we're going to do. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. And number 8. So I'll just double check them. Got a little bit more out of that. So I'll let it sit here 5 minutes or so, and I'll run them one more time. Now we're getting ready to install the upper. Alright, well now I'm going to install the spyder injector. I put my bracket back on here. Just got all the legs in this way. I'm going to carefully put this down in here. Kind of line things up, snap it in. Looking good. And they're numbered on the side, so I'm just going to start splaying the legs out carefully. And this is number 6, so it will go to the 6th hole. And then this is 8, it will go to the 8th hole. So I'm going to try to figure out which way they want to lay. It wants to go this way. So I'll put the 8 in, being very careful. And the 6. Two is this one, and 4. I want to lay like this. So that's 4. And then 2. Looking good. Can't read these. Okay, 7 and 5. 7 is the front one. That's not right. I need to flip these over themselves. There we go. Then the last two are one on the front one. Looks good. And 3 right here. And there we go. Alright, I've got my new O-ring seal around this injector here, as well as the new one that has put around in this area, this seal. I've lubricated this heavily with like a 3-in-1 oil, because this is very difficult to get this thing to seal. So hopefully I can get it to do that. Just putting it down, and you see it's standing proud. And I did, just like that. Looking good. Well, alright, I'm getting ready to install all the fasteners here for the upper intake. I've got all of the bolts laid out where they go. These are all going to get a little bit of blue Loctite, and they're going to be tightened down at the first pass of 44 inch-pounds, and they're going to be finished off at an 89 inch-pound. They don't give a bolt pattern here on how you torque these down, so I'll just make an X and work my way around and get this taken care of. Well, alright, it just seems to keep going on and on. I need to put the temperature sensor in. So I'll put some high temp thread sealant on this. Right here. And I'm also going to put this fitting in here. This is not the factory fitting. This is something that was modified some time back. You know, I think I'm to the point where I'm about to drop the motor in the truck, and every time I turn around there's something else I need to install. It's just the way it goes, I guess. Looking good there. And there we go on those two.